regardless of what state we were in, we saw increases in demand due to everyone having to stay at home and the transition from experiential goods to consumer packaged goods. And because of that increase in demand and the fact that the pandemic lasted another probably 18 to 2 years longer than we thought it was, people increased their supply in order to deal with that demand in 2021 and 2022. Then when pandemic ended, we're all dealing with the same thing, whether or not it's in Arizona, Washington, or Oregon, or Colorado, or many of these other states. In Massachusetts, where we have a little bit of a oversupply problem, creating a price crunch.
And we are back at MJ BizCon 2023. This is episode 1 of 40, and we're going to see how this goes. You got to call out the numbers.
It's a lot of 40s.
Here with one of my co-hosts. We have a lot of good co-hosts. And why don't you introduce yourself quickly?
My name is Max Uhas from Dope SEO. We're digital marketing for cannabis companies. We've been doing it since 2016.
Max is an unbelievable individual who cares about others, and everybody who's associated with MITA, everybody, the 80 individuals that are coming on the podcast, to share some 1, 2, 3, some ABCs of the different jurisdictions so you can know who to reach out to and how business development begins in the different jurisdictions, cares about you and cares about your education. They're doing this for free, and we appreciate these two individuals joining us, and I'm about to introduce them. But it's so cool that we're starting with Colorado as our first podcast because you guys were first.
We're the first,
yes.
Which is just appropriate.
Absolutely.
This was not planned.
I thought it was.
It is a total. We have this giant program. We stuck in Colorado, Washington, New York, Thailand. We'd have all these states, and maybe it was like unconscious or something,
Yeah.
So let's introduce you. Let's introduce you guys to our audience. Tell us a little about who you are, how long you've been involved in cannabis, and then we'll talk about your company. But first, who you are.
All right. I'm Alex Herding. I have been an advocate since I was in high school in the 90s, right outside D.C. That's where I really got the political activism, but I've been a part of the legal market since 2009. I was a caregiver right after the Green Rush started, when Attorney General wrote the Cole memo and allowed the medical businesses to get started. So I was growing for patients then. I was working with the dispensaries. And then when 2014 came around, I got one of the very first recreational license for cultivating in Leadville, Colorado. It got pretty dicey there. With the FDIC shutting down the operation because of the landlord had a lease. It got complicated, but I convinced a competitor of ours to actually hire my partner and I to design, build, and operate a world-class cultivation facility up in Leadville. So I got to start there. I have a big background in worker safety, so I started developing safety programs, worked with OSHA, have gone on as a consultant, and expanded into the quality management systems as well.
So before we get to Andrew quickly, this is like such an important theme because over this 2009, 2023, you've learned to navigate not just Colorado, but other states. And it's that navigating those waters that you have as a unique skill set and knowledge base that very few people have out there who are looking to jump from state to state.
Yep.
You see what I'm saying? Which is an unbelievable, I mean, you could be a consultant if you wanted to. You could be I guess a lobbyist or a lawyer or something. One of those guys that help people do that. That's what the information we're trying to get out of you. When did Colorado go medical?
Well, they actually passed the medical law in 2000, but it was 2009 when Obama and Attorney General his office passed this, put the Cole memo in.
Yeah, it was the Ogden memo in 2000.
Oh, it was the Ogden memo?
Oh, the Ogden and Wilkinson memorandum. I love this guy already. So, hey, I want you to tell the history of Colorado in a second. But first, let's introduce Andrew and the history next.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my name's Andrew Livingston. I'm the Director of Economics and Research at Vicente LLP. We're the probably first and largest cannabis law firm in the country. And I started getting involved in cannabis and drug policy forum back in 2009 when I was also in high school. A little after high school. Started a chapter of Students for Sensible Drug Policy at Colgate University in upstate New York. And then I worked
shout out to our program director, Larissa Ybarra, because I am already impressed by the quality of guests that you have managed to. Give her, she's right there, Larissa. Give her a little thing.
Yeah.
You brought us two superstars here,
Yeah,
Yeah.
we've both been doing this for a decade plus.
Yeah,
so.
I know, but I didn't set all this up, and she did, and this is perfect.
Yeah.
Go on.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Larissa. And so I worked on the Amendment 64 campaign back in 2012 and was kind of one of the first non-lawyer, non-administrative roles at Vicente when we were 6 or 7 people. And we are now in like 7 states, more than that.
Wow.
And so I do the economic analysis and regulatory policy analysis, but I helped to start up our compliance program in Colorado from about 2013 to about 2016. And I help people navigate the patchwork of cannabis laws in Colorado, across the country, and across the world, doing economic analysis and regulatory policy work.
Dude, that's awesome.
Yeah, very
So,
cool.
both of you guys, Your Honor, can I have them entered in as experts? What do we
That's
say?
actually a legal technical term, and I'd have to be, in order for me to do expert witness testimony, I'd have to go through some processes.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean,
okay.
I will say a relative expert.
Our courtroom and our judge is
Yeah.
okay with it.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
We're here
gonna,
under
we're gonna
the
edify you guys as
authority
experts.
of MJ BizCon.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning. Colorado went medical in.
Well, technically in 2000 they passed the laws, but it was very underground, and there wasn't a formal system that was really allowed. It was kind of decriminalized for
So
about a
there weren't any
decade.
licenses being issued back then.
So yeah, for a long period of time, from about 1996 when California passed Proposition 215 until about 2008, the last patient caregiver system in Michigan, it was implicitly or explicitly non-commercial systems because at that time during the Bush administration predominantly, no one wanted to license cannabis businesses because they were worried about putting state employees at risk for violations of federal law. So they created these sorts of non-commercial systems where a physician, and that was the physician rights to talk with a patient about cannabis had already been determined and approved in Supreme Court that was under First Amendment. And so we had these kind of patient systems, and then either the patients could grow themselves or a caregiver, yourself, could grow themselves. This turned semi-commercial, particularly in California, back in probably about 2006, 2007, as the Bush administration was waning. Then when the Obama administration came in, the first memorandum that was put out by Deputy Attorney Ogden at the time, this was before the Cole memo, back in 2008, basically set the first framework for the
Licensing?
it wasn't really licensing. It was set the first framework for the feds basically saying we're not going to go after patients and caregivers. So from then, the first states to then pass laws implementing commercial cannabis was actually New Mexico in 2007, but that was a non-commercial system.
Right.
Then was Colorado in 2010 with HB, 1218, if I remember correctly?
That sounds right. Right.
And so what happened then, so Brian Vicente, the lead partner of the law firm I work for, helped to win a case in Colorado. So the Department of Health basically at that time put in a ruling that said caregivers can only have 5 patients each. And basically he won on an administrative case saying that that ruling had no basis in the law and was not in compliance with the constitutional amendment that passed in 2000. So then they overturned it, allowing caregivers to serve an unlimited number of patients, which is essentially these storefront caregivers.
Right.
And rather than try to crack down on it, as like Washington State had done back in 2010 and some other states had done, Colorado passed a law, the first regulating commercial for-profit medical cannabis businesses in about 2010. That's why you saw a proliferation of these businesses in places like Denver and other spots. We were able to go from semi-legit to more legit, setting the pathway for adult use legalization to pass in 2012 and to be implemented in 2014.
So prior to 2010, the state wasn't actively counting plants and collecting taxes?
It was counting plants insofar as patients had a specific number of plants they could cultivate, or there was extended plant counts. But I don't think That
It was partial regulation.
It was partial regulation. Yeah, there was still like patient cards and a patient registry system and things like that going back, to 2000. But there were not there weren't metric tags. There actually weren't metric tags until 2014.
Yeah,
but no one wants to talk about that
right.
between 2010 and 2012. So.
It was a wild west.
And either of you guys should talk about this, and this is like a dissertation level subject. But
sorry, I've got to.
No. This is important stuff. I mean, I'm learning. I'm so excited to do this whole project here because I'm going to learn so much from the people that like yourself. And thank you again, Larissa, for bringing us such great experts. So you have these licenses in 2010, 11, 12 that are medical in nature. And the transition from medical to adult use, I remember I got involved in 2012, 13 in Arizona, and the question was being asked, how do you transition a medical market to an adult use market? Is it a different consumer base? Who's entitled to produce, sell the product? How does that transition work? And bring that up, Destiny, bring that up. It has arrived. It has arrived. This is the table of 1,000 ideas. What do you guys think?
Very sparkly.
What do you guys think? So you put whatever thing you do, and then get a whole new perspective on reality. You know what I'm saying? The psychedelic conference is next door, but we respect. Yeah. Okay, so it's a very unique madness. It's a madness. It's crazy what happens because it's never really happened much in human history where you take a certain commodity or a service or a good and you transition it into a new market structure with a new base set of consumers and patients. You want to reflect on that a little bit and talk about what happened in Colorado?
Yeah, actually, it actually parallels similar to the ending of prohibition of alcohol because they were actually Walgreens actually became Walgreens because they were supplying medical beer. And there was actually doctors and the prescribing in a very similar way.
Whoa.
And so, there's an interesting parallel there. But what I liked how Colorado did it, and I think how
everybody's doing it differently.
Everybody's doing it differently, but the way I see it was more successful. There was some states like California they were early, with the their medical system. But what they did, it was a nonprofit. They created a nonprofit system, which I appreciate that they were out early in doing this. But the reality is, everybody was in business to make money. And when they started in Colorado, the medical system was for profit, which was a more honest system. And so when they transitioned from the medical to the recreational, it was basically transitioning the license. You didn't need the patient's cards anymore. So it was a little more seamless than what you've seen in other states that were nonprofit.
Right. And do you want to reflect on this?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that part of the issue in California in that transition is that while they had medical cannabis from 1996, they never regulated their medical cannabis businesses until about 2015 with McCursa.
Oh, God, that's
so you had
long.
a system of almost 20 years of a gray market, and the consumer base and the entrepreneurial base got used to what was, for a period of time, the best of both worlds, which is a non-regulated, semi-legal business to do what you want with it.
Do what you want, and nobody's telling you what to do or how to do it.
And it's awesome. It's like you can just, you have patients come in and they can just give you a whole bunch of cannabis and you can figure it out. Thank you. And you can run your business kind of without that degree of oversight. Then McCursa, as it came in, had, so many layers of California-style bureaucracy that, there was actually a rapid transition between regulated medical and then adult use, and it actually kind of got mixed and merged together a little bit in a cacophony of trouble. And so that's kind of where California started its issues, and then also they had too high tax rates and too complicated of tax collection structure with the distribution systems. Some of that's been ameliorated a bit, but they're dealing with the echoes of those problems that occurred mid last decade.
If I was running a brand in cannabis and I was manufacturing in one of the states and I wanted to go national over the next 5-10 years, I would hire you as my in-house general counsel.
Well, thank you. I'm not an attorney, but I can be absolutely your in-house general economic analysis, and happy to have people reach out to me afterwards. I do economic projections and market analysis for pretty much every single state in the country, and I've been doing this for over a decade.
For the law firm.
I work for a law firm. I'm a unique individual in which a law firm has an in-house economist.
You're a unicorn, basically.
Yeah.
No, you are. This guy's ridiculous.
Yeah, impressive.
I've just been doing this for a while. So I mean, so have you.
No,
but it's
I
different
went
sort of-
great trying to figure this out, and I hear you. It's like trying to figure out the world, and all the different laws and rules and regulations and ethics and morals and things that govern us. And
Beliefs,
eventually, man can try as hard as he wants to, but eventually you can't figure everything out. But I'm listening to him. I'm like, maybe this guy's got it all figured out.
I mean, the cannabis industry is, they talk about it
at least in the cannabis industry.
Yeah.
Right.
The cannabis industry is a national industry, but it's not really national. It's a complex patchwork.
Yeah.
It's a quilt, right? Each state has its own unique design, and they are stitched together next to each other. Now, there are certain winds that will blow across the quilt in a way that affects everything, right? The pandemic, regardless of what state we were in, we saw increases in demand due to everyone having to stay at home and the transition from experiential goods to consumer packaged goods. And, because of that increase in demand and the fact that the pandemic lasted another probably 18 to 2 years longer than we thought it was, people increased their supply in order to deal with that demand in 2021 and 2022. Then when pandemic ended, we're all dealing with the same thing, whether or not it's in Arizona or whether or not it's in Washington or Oregon or Colorado or many of these other states. In Massachusetts, where we have a little bit of a oversupply problem, creating a price crunch, and that sort of thing is
Is there such thing as oversupply, though? Isn't that a better perspective?
No, absolutely, because you can't send cannabis legally out of states. And of course, there's always this certain degree that, illicit market diversion out of state is a little bit of a pressure valve to prices.
Yeah.
That only works so much, particularly when, during 2021, 2022, a state like, Oklahoma was doing a lot more of that and kind of sucking some of that up. And so particularly when, you build out a cultivation facility in some of these states, Colorado's less of an issue because we have lower costs. But, if you're building out a facility in the East Coast and your cost of production is $1,800 a pound, you're not going to be profitable because cannabis is going to come down to, below 2,000.
I don't keep walking. I want to talk a little about the oversupply concept, though, because we get into this all the time because you have all these policymakers, all these legislators, everybody's trying to figure out what the right balance is, how the right market structure should be, right licensing structure, how many license. I am a free market advocate, 100% unequivocally. I think we've created the drug war 2.0, prohibition 2.0, and that's not what Mother Nature called for. So that's just my philosophical perspective. That's not reality, okay? Yeah. So, but when you use a term like oversupply, if a cultivator built a big facility, and a whole bunch of other cultivators build big facilities in New Jersey, they might go to the legislature and say, no, there's an oversupply. We need to restrict the amount of cultivations. But really, what they did is they
gobbled up the market too early.
And they made a mistake, and it's over, and you're going to go out of business, and tough cookies, tough luck.
So on a regulatory policy structure, there's two primary ways states regulate supply. Sometimes they do both, but that's usually a little bit rare. They usually do one or the other, which is they're either going to limit the number of licenses or they're going to limit the size and the speed at which those licenses can expand.
Yep.
So Colorado's got that second option, right? We have different tiers.
Yep.
You start at certain tiers and you can expand up, and you need to, in order to expand to a next tier, you need to demonstrate that you're growing at or near 85% of your plant count, and then you can apply and you can increase your allotment. Massachusetts does something similar. A handful of other states do something similar. Then there's places like Arizona, which limits the number of licenses, but doesn't actually limit the cultivation of each one of those licenses. Yeah, that actually has less of a supply constriction, right? Because what you're essentially doing is you have a handful of players that you have an unknown amount of cannabis on the market, where a place like Colorado or Massachusetts actually know the number of licenses, they know the allocated canopy. But even more so, if you look at some of the studies, so Colorado did some studies, one of my colleagues, Adam Orens, with MPG Consulting, and there's some studies out in Washington. When you look at underutilized capacity, so what that is like how much cannabis square foot has been allocated and how much is actually being grown. It's really only about 40 to 60%. So you think these regulators have a control over supply, but to a certain extent, it's like a marionette with too long of strings. They don't
So
actually have
it's
control
not a
over
real
the
good
machinations.
flow, yeah.
Yeah, and so
I'm not a fan of strings.
no,
I'm just not.
Yeah, so I don't know if that metaphor fits for you, but
I'm an Adam Smith guy. There's only one revolution,
Yeah.
and it's the revolution
So-
of freedom, and it takes different forms.
So the fascinating thing, right, is that you say, okay, well, Colorado is one of the few states that actually has gone. This is, we're having a license decline on cultivation.
Yep.
It's been, I think, probably about 18 to 20% decline since its peak in 2021 or 2022 when we hit about, it was like 880 or so adult use cultivation licenses.
Yeah, sounds
but
right.
we had in 2017 and 2018, it was 2018 and 2019, we had a decline in cultivation licenses previously when we went through an up and down. So this is actually our second up and down. It's larger than the one previously. I think it was only about an 8.5% decline in the number of cultivation licenses back then. But the market does correct. The question is how fast does that market correct, right? And for regulators in the state, given that illicit market diversion is illegal and a threat to the industry at large, there is the risk of you say, okay, well, we want a market correction, right? So, but market corrections increase the likelihood that businesses may end up doing things that are out of compliance. And so that's the only reason why you have to actually be concerned, because the self-correcting mechanisms of a free market induce additional compliance concerns during the heat of the moment.
I love how you say this calmly. Me, when I start to talk about market opportunities and market structure, I get a little upset when I have to tell entrepreneurs or individuals that want to participate, your unborn child who one day wants to get involved in cannabis.
Yeah, he's 1.5. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So 18 years from now, your son and daughter is going to say, hey, Dad, I want to do a cultivation. And you're going to say, but there's this barrier created by the government that you first have to jump through
Or
over.
you can never get a license because they aren't issuing new ones.
Right.
There
It
you
is.
go.
It is
It's like
truly
liquor licenses
sad.
in specific
Yes.
states where it
It's
just has to be
truly-
generational and handed down.
And I won't challenge you guys if you guys have particular clients or stuff that you have to represent, but I refuse to live in a world that accepts that the government can get in the way of my hopes, dreams, and opportunities. That's not what I want. And as somebody who cares about employees going to the workplace and learning how a dispensary works, so learning how the cultivation works, I want to make sure that the government and the market structures that we set up or we encourage or promote are as accessible as possible. That's just me. I don't know if you guys agree or.
Yeah.
Largely.
Yeah.
I do think there should be
You're
some,
not going to
some
say no in
controls.
public.
No. I don't want to take up too much of the time. I want to.
The only caveat I'd say is, I do appreciate, the government controls when it comes to worker and consumer safety.
Yeah.
There should be some type of controls there. I
Yeah.
mean, but I agree. I think there should be that the free market should largely correct itself.
Well, so tell us about, let's focus a little bit more on Colorado right now as it is. I know when you asked the question, how's the Colorado market? It's so broad and there's so many different agendas, but give us a little reflection upon your experience right now.
Yeah, and obviously I'm interested in
It's
what you have to say, but
it's
it's the most mature market, right? And I mean, you see some of the maturation going on and some of the pain involved with it. I mean, it's a race to the bottom for cost of goods sold right now, so it is a real competition,
Right.
And the exciting things that I'm seeing and going back to the product safety side, and it actually frees up some of the potential burdens of the some of the testing requirements is and I was just talking to some experts yesterday, and it's at a rulemaking process or a step that I'm curious, but it's a HACCP, which is a hazard analysis and critical control points requirements that, well, not a requirement, that says if you can come in, and they call it HACCP, which is basically good best practices for food making and general kind of production of products that people consume. And so what they're saying is that if you can come in and prove that you have better control over these hazards and the contaminants, that they'll actually reduce your testing requirements, which a lot of people, the new testing requirements that came in, there's a lot of mycotoxin testing that a lot of people find extremely burdensome. So they're actually giving some of these operators additional, options to reduce that burden by proving that they can keep the product safe.
So what are the best, and I want to think about this question for a second because I want to make a comment, but what are the best opportunities, the best places to get involved in the market in Colorado right now? Just hold your thought for a second, because I do like to say, we don't say race to the bottom around here. We say the natural point at which cannabis should be produced and cultivated and all those kind of things, because that's about a perspective again. And those policymakers, when they hear race to the bottom, they think there's a problem. But there isn't a problem. The price should come down to where it belongs naturally, and that's best for the patients and consumers. And I challenge anyone in this industry to share with the patients and the consumers that they don't want the prices to come down, and they want to be protected by government regulations.
There's no reason for an agricultural product, regardless of whether or not it's grown indoors under LED lights, to cost more than $1,000 a pound to produce.
Right. But we do have the safety and concerns that are very genuine.
And sometimes those additional costs are unnecessary regulatory burdens. So we need to look at how we can, advance efficiencies there.
No.
And honestly, one of the things that Colorado is doing in the way that they're shifting from, the frequency of testing to kind of outside of the cannabis industry, how food product safety testing occurs normally, it's not that every single, batch of chickens it's tested. It's that there is hazard and critical control point analysis, good manufacturing practice standards, and, random testing from the federal government or your local regulators that come in. And so that testing, we have a sophisticated food product safety testing outside of the cannabis industry that we just haven't implemented in the same way for cannabis because of, one, some of the structures for good manufacturing practices the initial businesses couldn't meet, and so they kind of overcompensated with that with the frequency of testing, which just adds variable costs rather than initial capital costs.
So do you have an answer to that question? What are the best market opportunities in Colorado right now?
It's a tough market. I mean, and what I would tell people is if you can find a good location for a dispensary. If you're not already involved in cultivating or extraction, it's going to be really hard to get involved. The opportunities, if you want to be a part of the plant touching industry, I'd say it's a good it's location. If you can find a good spot for dispensary, there's always opportunities there. And honestly, I think the infused product market really has there's so much creativity that you can infuse it in topicals and edibles and drinkables. I think there's still plenty of opportunity there.
I could geek out with you guys all day long. Our producer, we got to wrap this one up. This is why I came to MJ BizCon, to sit and have these conversations with guys like you.
People.
I know more now than I did when I sat here, and I love that. That is absolutely awesome, and so does our audience. Are you guys accessible to our audience if they want to reach out to you?
How do they get in touch with you?
Absolutely.
What's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
So first off, people should go to Vicente LLP.com. You can find me. My name's Andrew Livingston. Shoot me an email, a.livingston@VicenteLLP.com. Happy to chat with people. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well. Reach out to me, and I'll shoot you my email, and we'll correspondence from there. I'm looking to take in new clients. Looking to expand the econ department. At the firm, and really at this point in time, it's about understanding that complex nature of different regulatory systems, whether it's in Colorado or nationally, so that you can figure out how to capitalize on the economic opportunities that exist. Because right now, cannabis businesses are being sold for cheap, particularly in Colorado. So if you're an investor who hadn't jumped in, now is actually not a bad time to, if you have the capital to take it the extra 12 months until the rebound of the market in the state.
So you have so much more to offer. People, you reach out to him, call him, you know how to get in touch with him. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And now, how do people get in touch with you? Some closing thoughts.
Yeah, so I'm with ICS Consulting Service. You can find it at icsconsultingservice.com. We help with compliance issues and also worker safety, product safety. It also provide people with additional resources if they're looking for it, but we're here to help.
Obviously, total expert on Colorado. Are you doing compliance cross country too?
Yeah, nationally, yep.
Ouch, so we didn't even get into that.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Give these guys a call.
Yeah, quality management systems, worker safety, a whole other wormholes that we can go down.
Yep.
We got to keep these at 30 minutes, and this has been one of my favorite podcasts that I've ever done.
It's the first one it's the first official
MITA Unshackled from MJ
MITA
BizCon
Unshackled from MJ
2023.
BizCon. I mean, this is.
So this is officially my favorite one.
I feel like we just, yeah.
One and only.
It's like we just set a bar.
We will be back with episode 2, episode 3, and the rest of the MITA Unshackled state-by-state series here from MJ BizCon 2023. Thank you guys for being our first guests.
you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate it.